Welcome to Whether or Not and to What Degree. I am First Alert meteorologist Chrissy Kohler, joined by First Alert meteorologist Adam McWilliams.
Hello, hello.
It's we're headed into Thanksgiving. We're headed into the holidays, and we're headed into winter weather forecasting,
which is always fun, especially in the South. You know, coming from Mississippi, it's always kind of the worst headache of a meteorologist trying to predict that wonderful S word that we don't like to say that often.
No, we don't.
Because we know the impact it has.
Yeah.
You know, the milk and the bread fly off the shelves.
Yes, we have to be very careful when we throw that S word out in a forecast.
Absolutely.
It's really going to do something, because you're right. Like, people around here, we're just not. And I should say, I feel like we especially here in the Western Carolinas have two very unique setups where our folks in the mountains are like, yeah, we got this. We know how to handle snow, but they also know how to handle it. So it's not as big of a deal to them. Whereas in the upstate, of course, we have our, 2 snowplows.
Right, exactly. Well, and
for the whole state.
Well, and this year we broke the snow drought. You know, we went 3 years without any snow, and then we got like 3 snows in a month. And the age of social media does not help us a lot, because you have a lot of information out there. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it really bad. And you kind of have to, or we have to, kind of be the voice of reason. And that's it's tricky sometimes.
Yeah. I want to say, because travel back in time with me, because you and I are both, we've aged in this business. We've been around for a minute. And so, I remember coming up and coming right out of school, and my first year out of the business, Facebook wasn't even available to anybody without a college email address.
Absolutely. I remember that. Yeah, so absolutely.
And my first, my page now, my Chrissy Kohler page that you can go find, that started out as a profile, a Facebook profile, because that was before pages existed. So you had to go friend me and find me on Facebook. So you had a very different setup. X was there, but it wasn't super popular. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Snapchat. We didn't have all of these things that we now have, and all these ways that people are able to get information and get it out. And so I think you and I have had to kind of evolve with that, how things have gone. But we've also seen how that social media trend has changed what we do for a living.
Oh my gosh! I mean, we came from a time when people sell flip phones. And now, and I even remember at my old station where I interned at, and there was a talk of the station getting a Facebook page, and there were some people in there like, Facebook? Why do we need to be on Facebook? We're a news organization. What do we need to be on Facebook for? Like, I don't need to see a viral cat video, or whatever. But now it has evolved to where, most people consume their weather and news information on an app or on social media, and it's wild. And that was only maybe 15 years ago, something like that.
Absolutely. And I think yes, it's changed so much, and I think it's forced our hand as meteorologists to maybe sometimes tread into territory that we're not ready to tread into sometimes. I sometimes feel like I'm forced to talk about weather events that I don't want to talk about because I don't know. There's so much uncertainty. But social media has kind of forced us to kind of look further ahead than maybe sometimes we're comfortable with.
And that's the thing that I think, you kind of have to explain. I know when I go to school talks, and they start asking about things like that, and I say, listen, there are some times when we're not confident 3 days out ahead of an event, much less 14 or 21, or and that's the thing. I think that we have to kind of walk that line of, okay, this is a possibility, but more than likely it's going to change. And and I'm glad that here on the First Alert Weather team, Kendra, you and Catherine and I, we are all of the same mindset of, we'll let you know when it's time to be concerned and when it's time to worry. We're not the ones out there, like a lot of other pages where they'll take one run of one model 2 weeks in advance and put that out there, because
I saw a snow forecast for an entire season.
I know.
First of all, that we even have that product, I don't know.
I don't even know if that's even useful.
It's not. There's nothing useful about this, and it's just it's wild to me that there are people out there that think that they can sharing these types of things. It feels irresponsible.
Well,
you know?
and the thing is, and we have to admit that the science is not that good yet. The science is not there yet.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, you know, that I find frustrating is the fact that, you know, there are good meteorologists out there, and they'll put some really good stuff out there, and it gets like maybe 4 or 5 likes.
Right.
And then you get some, you know, rando that has just enough knowledge to be dangerous.
Yeah.
They'll put something out there and it gets like 20,000 shares, and then we start getting asked, well, why don't you tell us about this? Why don't you tell us about this? Because it may not happen. It probably isn't going to happen.
There's nothing to tell.
There's nothing to tell. And
right.
And you know, I think that's one thing that people do need to understand is with meteorology, it is a science, and with any science, there is a certain degree of uncertainty.
Yeah.
There is a degree of uncertainty.
Yeah, we're trying to predict the future here.
Right.
I want to go back to kind of what you said, because you mentioned sometimes even 3 days out we don't know, and that's, I feel like it's a general rule of thumb. And granted, modeling is getting better and better.
Absolutely.
The way that they're fine tuning the data and the way that they've evolved through the models are always learning about where they went wrong, so they're always kind of evolving.
Right.
But I still feel like even in this day and age, you know, general rule of thumb, the next 3 days we're pretty good on, right?
Right.
And let me tell you, I actually had somebody say this to my face a couple weeks ago. Must be nice to have a job where you can be wrong all the time and still keep your job. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
First of all, don't say that to me.
No.
It's old,
No.
it's tired, and it's not true. It's just simply not true.
Right.
If you were to actually, I bet if the First Alert Weather Team, if all 4 of us started to take stock of how accurate our forecasts were, we would probably be right, 80% of the time?
Oh, what I do with myself is when I forecast, I go back the next day to see how I verified.
I check the climate report every afternoon when it comes out.
You know, and I give myself 4 degrees of wiggle room.
Yes.
I say if I'm within 4 degrees of my high or low, I nailed it.
Yes. And it's like, you know, is there that moment where, like, you know, okay, we got a few more showers out of the mountains that ended up in the upstate.
Right.
Shoot. But, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, yes, occasionally we get it wrong, but more often than not, we are right. And so it's frustrating to be in a setup where people automatically think that, where they're like, but really 3 days out, we're pretty accurate. Yeah. You know, it's you know, occasionally you'll get a setup. I remember there was a couple months ago where we were super frustrated about something, where it just felt like the data was constantly changing every single model run, and they weren't agreeing with each other.
Right.
And so we were super frustrated because it was a couple days out, which is very abnormal.
Right.
So, but I feel like that's where our First Alert Weather Team does a really good job of saying, hey, we have uncertainty with this forecast, even though it is right around the corner. We have uncertainty. And then you get to that 6 to 7 day range where it's like we've got a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. There may be some tweaks and changes. Right. And then beyond 7 days.
I call it voodoo land.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, Matt, it's just like, you know, whatever they want to do, you know. Yeah. And you're right. And, you know, kind of bringing that back to what we do here in the First Alert Weather Team is that, you know, I think we're really good about telling people, you know, explaining to them.
Yes.
Like, hey, this is an ever-changing forecast, you know, because there are many times that we have put the GFS and the Euro together, and it is dry and wet, and wet. What you're going to pick, you know? and I think, you know, people respond to that. I think people respond to the fact that, you know, we are looking at it as an ever-changing situation, and hey, we're going to tell you like we see it. We're going to tell you just like it is. We're not going to hype it up. We're not going to try to make it, you know, wish casting. We're not going to try to make something that is not there.
Right.
We're going to tell you what we're seeing.
Well, because what I think we're seeing a lot of on social media right now, what's happening is that you've got some people who I couldn't tell you where their degrees are from, so I don't even know if they have formal training or if they've just kind of self-taught along the way. And when it comes to weather, all of this information is readily available. Some of it's behind a paywall and but you know, you're not paying a ton of money to get access to it. So it's easy for these social media folks who may not have a degree in meteorology to get access to it and then present themselves as some sort of weather forecaster. And then they're spreading this information, and then all of a sudden you've got all these people who are following them and clicking, liking, and all this kind of stuff. And so then it starts to spread like wildfire, and then we've got people coming to us to say, hey, why aren't you, like you said, why aren't you talking about this thing? Well, because that was one model run of the outlier, and it's not realistic. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
Because we do this every single day where you're looking at all of this data, and I take, you know, you've seen my sheet, my forecast sheet,
Absolutely.
where I write down all of this. I still do it by hand just because it helps in putting it in my brain better.
Absolutely.
So that when I go on TV and I ad-lib about it, it all lives right there.
Right there, right.
But it's like I write down, I have 7 different models that I look at, and then I have 2 others that I go look at over here after I've all done this. And it's like sometimes you're looking at that and I'm like for instance, the last couple of days, the NAM has been out to lunch on temperatures.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I look at it and I can say, all right, I'm throwing that out because it's just not realistic. It's not matching up with all the other guidance. It's over here and everybody else is over here. And so that's what you see sometimes when you get these posts where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe there is a snow event being forecasted by the Canadian model over here, but everybody else is living over here. So why are we going to show this one model? Because it's clickable, because it's likable.
It'll get,
It's going to get clicks and it's going to get likes. And unfortunately, that's the world where social media lives. You make money off of those posts. You get more likes, you get more money, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what's driving it.
Yeah, and you know, I had a climate teacher at Mississippi State. His name was Dr. Charles Wax, and he always used to say perspective.
Yes.
You have to put things in perspective. And like you said, you look at all these models, and we all look at all these models. We have perspective.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you put this one outlier that has, you know, a snowpocalypse storm over, you know, Greenville, and then the other 6 don't have it, you lose that perspective. Because you see that one thing and you think, oh, well, that's the truth right there. That's what's going to happen, you know. So social media has taken perspective out of the equation.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately it has become a little dangerous at times.
Yeah.
Because then people are getting their information from places where it's like, can you trust that information that's coming out when it really does matter, when it becomes a life or death situation?
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the things that we all pride ourselves on, is trying to be that voice of reason. But that way too, we're not the boy who cries wolf. So that when there is something that's happening, when we've got a severe weather setup, or there's a day where it looks like there could be tornadoes, or maybe we do get 5 inches of snow this winter, not out of the question. Could not tell you when that's going to happen, if that's going to happen, but then people will come to us, hopefully, because then we have proven that we're the voice of reason, and we're not here to just hype the weather events.
Well, you know, and I learned this a long time ago. True severe weather is rare. True severe weather is rare. Not every thunderstorm that happens here in the upstate in the Western Carolinas is the mountain of the 4 horsemen. You know, it is. It's not. It is not this apocalyptic storm that is unheard of. We get thunderstorms in the summertime. We're in a subtropical climate. It is humid. It's hot. We get thunderstorms in the afternoon.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the thing too, where I think us degreed meteorologists that don't hype, I think that's where we come in and we can say, okay, yes, that was a bad thunderstorm, but it was nothing that we have not seen around here before, you know. And so I think too, you know, we don't need to hype up everyday weather either. I mean, you know, we can have a nice, calm, sunny day, and that be it. You know. And you know, not everything is, you know, intense sunshine, intense, you know, wind, intense. You know, it's just not everything is intense.
I mean, we set a record high the other day. You know,
yesterday we tied it
in November. We set a record high, and it's like, you know, that was, or we tied the record, and so it's like that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a big, it's a big deal, but I don't necessarily know that like 78 degrees in November isn't unheard of.
No, it's happened before.
It's happened before.
I mean, clearly we had a record of it. You know,
right.
I mean, even though it was 1890, but it happened before, and we've gotten warm before. You know, I remember last year. Fall for Greenville was in November.
Yes.
And we had record temperatures
warm.
You know, that record temperatures that week. So
I'll be honest, part of the reason I live in the South is because I like warm temperatures.
Warm weather lovers.
All year round.
You know?
So.
But no, just, you know, looking ahead, you know, our stance is, and will always be, is that if we see trends, and if if the trends hold, and you know, we're feeling confident about what's going to happen, we will let you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point to bring up is kind of watching these trends, because that's what we do, especially when you're looking out beyond day 3.
Right.
You're really watching just trends. And so we typically like to say we want 3 model runs in a row, and you're talking about 36 hours of data, right? Because as you and I have talked about many times, and we'll talk about this with Kendra and Catherine too, where it's like those the 60 and the 18Z model runs, you might want to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. And again, these are things that we have experience with, so we kind of know to look for these things.
Right.
And if you're not a well-rounded, well-studied meteorologist, yeah, you may grab that 6Z, but not pay attention to the fact that the 0Z and the 12Z are completely, like, the 12Z and the 0Z are agreeing with each other, but then you had a bad run at 6.
Right.
You know, so like these are the things that we're looking for, is about that 3 model run, about 36 hours of data that continues to be consistent, and the consistency among the models and the ensembles.
Right.
So you're looking for that consistency, not just within a model, but then also within the agreement with the 2. Now, if you have the 2 models that are disagreeing with each other, and you've got one model that's, this is what I think, and I am not going to budge from here, and then the other model is kind of waffling all over the place, you're going to try to trend towards that model that's like staunch on like, this is what I think is going to happen. But then we've all seen it too, where it's like you get that, you know, the GFS, for instance, in the tropics likes to be like hard pressed on something, right? And then the Euro will be kind of waffling over here, but eventually the GFS kind of comes over to the Euro. Or you can have it the opposite way. I would say that at this day and age, like, I think both models do a really good job, both of those global models, that I don't necessarily know that I trend towards one or the other. I think back in the day, a lot of people used to, the Euro was better.
Right, you know.
But I think the GFS has started to catch up, and I don't think you necessarily have to throw one out or, you know, all the time. I don't think they're necessarily, I think you got to take them both.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, you know, you were talking about trends, and I've always said trends are your friends.
I like that.
Trends are your friends.
I like that.
Because, you know, I mean, if you have one that is consistently showing you the same thing, you're going to tend to trust that one more than this one over here that's like, you know. And that's just, that is our job as meteorologists, to look at that. And, you know, pattern recognition too.
Well, and I was going to say, this is a really good, so we had that Arctic blast that broke out, was at the end of October? So we called that one, what, about 8-9 days out? Which is abnormal. And I will say, but the difference with that one is there was a strong signal from all of the models, all the ensembles, and they all agreed with each other that this was what was going to happen. So we were able to say a little bit earlier than normal with confidence, and occasionally that happens, but that's an anomaly. I feel like that's an anomaly to be 8 to 9 days out
and be confident.
And be confident in that signal. Now, did we go full force at that point, 8 to 9 days out? No, we were just like, hey, heads up, it looks like this could be a thing. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll let you know. And then as we got closer and closer, that's when we honed in, and we were like, oh yeah, no, we're talking 30s and 40s for highs. So, you know, those are the trends. But at this point, a lot of what we're seeing the last week of November, headed into the first week of December, I don't see anything that points to anything solid.
And I don't see any true Arctic blast. I mean, yes, it's going to cool down. We'll get cool weather after Thanksgiving, but I don't see anything that shows we're going to get this, you know, like what we had a couple weeks ago, this Arctic true Arctic blast where we had snow in the mountains in early November.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And we, you know, like highs in the 30s and 40s, wind chills in the 20s. I don't see any of that really into December.
Yeah. I agree.
As of now.
I agree. So, let's talk real fast about what people can do to maybe combat this.
Absolutely.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the social media. I think just some things I've been rolling around, Adam, in my head is just, you know, if you're seeing these kind of hype posts, don't like them. Don't give into it.
Right.
The more people that like posts or that view posts, the more air they get, and the more those start to spread. Don't share those. Don't like them. If you have questions, come to us. Ask us.
That's our job. That's literally our job.
We want you to trust us, and we want you to trust that we are giving you everything that we know. And I don't think any single one of us would not give you the information that you ask for with every ounce of honesty that we have.
Absolutely. You know, and you know, to your point on that, you know, I think the reason that, you know, these posts get so much traction is, you know, somebody's mother will see it and share it, and then they'll reshare it from their mama's post, or somebody's uncle or aunt or cousin or best friend, you know, and they're like, well, they shared it and they're a trustworthy person. You know, I'll go ahead and share it, you know. So it's kind of, you kind of have to, you know, look at that post yourself. And before you start sharing it, because that's how it spreads. You know, and like wildfire.
And dig into who you're getting your information from. I'm not saying all of these people are you know, like, they're not bad people. It's just sometimes you get caught up and you kind of miss the mark or miss the point of what we're doing here, which is really, at the end of the day, we have information. We're good at analyzing it. We've been trained to analyze it. So it's our job to pass that information along to you in a way that you guys are going to understand it, and then can turn around and use it in your everyday life. Like, that's our job. And so therefore, dig into who you're getting your information from, and make sure that the people that you're getting your weather information from are meteorologists, that they have experience, that they are trustworthy, that you feel like, yes, there is some training here, and this person isn't here to just make money off of their social media posts. Because there's a lot of people out there like that.
Absolutely. And pay attention to language, you know, how they word post, you know, because I think that is a telltale sign of, you know, of how they convey information.
I think the only thing I ever capitalize on a post is the date. Like that I've posted it, of like Saturday morning update. Because that tends to be what people miss more often, is like, which update is this? So it's like, those are the only letters I ever capitalize. I never capitalize anything else, just because it's like, I don't need to. But you're right, like, you can kind of read into how someone's posting to tell.
If everything's extreme, you know, might not be somebody, you know, everything's, you know, extreme, intense, you know, those are strong words to use.
Very rarely are they.
Very rarely do we have intense extreme weather here in the Western Carolinas.
Brutally cold, but that's just because I'm cold all the time.
Because,
so it's brutal to me.
We're both warm weather lovers, so yeah, that's brutal. Anything below 50 is brutal.
Amen, sir.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right. That's right. All right, Chrissy. Well, this was a great conversation, and you know, I hope that everybody out there, you know, kind of uses that, and you know, and stays with us during this winter weather season, because you know, just like last year, we're going to be watching it. We're going to be watching trends, and of course, if anything changes, we'll give you the first alert. We are the First Alert Weather Team.
That's what we're there for. That's the promise, is that when we know, you will know. So
that's right.
Don't think we're ever hiding anything. Hey, shameless plug, go follow us on social media.
Yes.
Because we'll share the good stuff with you. We'll share the, you know, occasionally get other things from us, but, you know, family pictures, all that kind of stuff.
You're Chrissy Kohler on Facebook.
Chrissy Kohler on Facebook.
And then Adam McWilliams.
Yes. So go follow us, give us a follow, and we will be sure to give you updated and answer any questions y'all have.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Whether or Not and to What Degree podcast, and we'll see you next time.